Julie, and good afternoon to all the dignitaries, all the invitees, our guests from South Korea, and all the participants over here, and my dear colleagues. So, the agenda of my talk will be related to a subsection of ecotourism, that is basically agro-tourism and rural tourism, because Ladakh region more or less has only two prominent cities, Leh and Kargil, and majority of the area is mainly rural-based economy. So I'll focus more on agro and rural tourism as a subset of ecotourism as such, because we've had a lot of talk on ecotourism by the two revered speakers before me. So if we can have it on the screen, please. I'll also touch upon why tourism, why is it so important, because I've been told to touch upon the future of tourism in India. And we'll also discuss about two success stories on agro and rural tourism. One is from Kerala and the other one is from Govardhan Eco Village in Maharashtra. The idea is to learn from these success stories. In fact, Govardhan Ecotourist Village has been awarded the Best Tourism Initiative Award given by UNWTO. So it's an internationally renowned eco village now. And I believe these are very good things which can be replicated in Ladakh region on a very, very big way, like we've seen from the previous speaker, Mr. Joint Secretary Sir, how ecotourism and homestays, training and all has been going on in Ladakh. I just want it is done a bit more online, so that homestays of Ladakh do have an online travel marketplace. Right now they may be busy with Airbnb probably, but if we have some sort of mechanism of marketing the homestays of Ladakh by providing a platform which not only gives the tourists a view of the homestays available, but also the facility of booking through that online travel marketplace. So I hope the policymakers over here will take this thing from me as a suggestion, so that we can bring in Ladakh more prominently. And the money actually does not go to people sitting in Delhi and the tour operators and the travel agents, but that money directly comes to the local economy of Ladakh. For that, we need to take a bit of initiative for that. Right. We believe that tourism is a tool for inclusive development. We believe in tourism academics where no industry can survive, there only tourism can survive. Like in Ladakh region, I do not believe we can have various industries coming and being set up over here because of the difficult terrain and weather conditions, but it is tourism. And a honored speaker before me said that 50% of the population of Ladakh is sustained economically through tourism. So I believe with the status of union territory being given to Ladakh, in the coming 4-5 years, at least 75 to 80% population will survive on tourism-related economic benefits. So why we say that tourism is a tool for inclusive development? Because it creates a lot of income, it creates a lot of employment numbers, it creates entrepreneurship opportunities to socially and economically poor, other marginalized sections, including the geographical peripheries, where nobody can provide any benefit, there tourism can provide the benefit. It employs huge chunks of semi-skilled and unskilled labor force. You don't have to have much of degrees to survive in this industry or to be successful in this industry. It has a relatively higher female participation, therefore development of tourism also leads to the development and empowerment of women folk in the local region. It is a tool to eradicate poverty, achieve other development goals. It can be instrumental to the local area development, like in the previous presentation we've seen how people are benefited by getting trained to make souvenirs to sell to the tourists and getting trained to how to manage and run a homestay accommodation. Then opportunities created by tourism propel tourism demand and by, of course, tourism stakeholders' participation. And essentially, I would say the Honorable Prime Minister of India has been emphasizing a lot on Make in India initiative. And the best example of Make in India probably is tourism industry, where everything is local, everything is provided by the local, and it is under the framework of Make in India. Now coming to the topic, why tourism is important in India. Because actually tourism matters. We leave apart everything else or culture, whatever we say, but tourism is a hardcore economic activity. It is a huge business. Tourism is the third largest foreign exchange earning industry in India and also in the world. Third largest. We talk of IT industry, we talk of so many industries, but tourism fetches us more foreign exchange than a lot of industries clubbed together can give you. It's a major source of FEE over here stands for foreign exchange earning. Like sir had earlier told that we have touched 10.5 million tourist arrivals in India. And actually it is 14.5 million visits by foreigners in India in the year 2018. So those 14.5 million visits have spent 1,75,000 crore rupees in the year 2017. In the year 2018, the tentative figures are that we have crossed the figure of 1,90,000 crores. So these 10 to 14 million visits, people coming to India, foreigners coming to India have given us 1,90,000 crores of foreign exchange. This is why tourism matters. And what have we done to generate this income? We practically spend nothing to generate this income. We sell the tourism products we already have, right? We do not invest too much on infrastructure, which we should, of course, in the coming future. But then too much of development of infrastructure will also not be a good thing for the sustainability aspect of eco-fragile areas like Ladakh. It contributes to GDP, sir has rightly said 2%, but 2% is the direct contribution of tourism to the GDP. It has more of an indirect contribution to the GDP. So direct and indirect clubbed together gives us around 6.88% to the entire GDP of the country, which is one of the highest among all the industries. That is the power of tourism. It accounts for 12.36% of the total jobs created. This includes direct as well as indirect jobs. And here we are not talking of induced jobs. Direct and indirect jobs also create induced jobs which we do not even assign that it is because of tourism. Like say, for example, construction of an airport. So the construction industry is benefited, the steel industry is benefited, the architects are benefited, the JCB manufacturers are benefited. It is because of one development activity of tourism, which we do not assign to tourism industry as such. So this is just the direct and indirect impact. Induced impact of creating employment is very, very high in tourism industry. Tourism industry has the highest multiplier index. So 1 rupee spent by a tourist in India fetches us approximately 3.42 rupees worth of value. That is the power of a tourism industry. 1 रुपया 3 रुपये 42 पैसे के बराबर की वैल्यू हमारे देश की इकोनॉमी में क्रिएट करता है before its value becomes almost zero. World Tourism and Travel Council, it's a private body but at par with the UNWTO for private players. It's the 7th largest TNT economy, total contribution to GDP at 9.3%. ये वर्ल्ड ट्रैवल एंड टूरिज्म काउंसिल का कहना है, बट हमारे देश की जो ऑफिशियल फिगर्स है वो 6.88 हैं. We were the fastest growing in the entire world at 8.5%. This growth rate has reduced in the last 2 years, but still the average growth rate of world tourism increased around 4% and ours around 6.5%. So we are still increasing. Our growth is still 150% of what the world's growth rate is. Domestic travel contributes 88% to the travel and tourism economy in India. So the days are gone when we were banking only on the international tourists to come and give us money. The domestic tourists are spending more than what the international tourists are coming and giving us. And of course, visitor exports is 12% of the total economy. This is just a graphic of the contribution of travel and tourism to the GDP. It is in $1 billion INR, and by 2028, we expect that almost $32,000 billion will be contributed by travel and tourism to the Indian economy. $32,000 billion. Sorry, rupees. This includes, of course, the foreign exchange earnings as well as the contribution made by the domestic tourists to the economy. This is what we expect in percentage. By 2028, almost 10% contribution will be made by tourism industry to the GDP of India. 10%, that is a huge, huge thing. Right now we are at 6.88%. In the coming 10 years, we expect this to grow to a level of 10%. That means every 10th rupee created in India will be created through tourism industry alone. This is how we have increased. 2016, 8.7 million. 2018, we've had 10.5 million foreign tourist arrivals, but that makes it to 14.5 million tourist visits, right? So 10.5 million people have made 14.5 million visits to our country and contributing around 1,90,000 crores. This is domestic tourism. 2016 it was 1,613 million, that is 1.6 billion, and now in 2018 that has increased to 1.8 billion. Almost a double figure growth rate is witnessed in domestic tourism. I see my students not talking of the cars or luxuries of life, but they're talking about where have you been? 3 दिन की छुट्टी थी, कहाँ गए थे? क्या देख के आए? So travel has become a cultural part of our life now. People used to have long holidays earlier, but now the holidays duration has shortened, but the number of holidays has increased multiple times. This is the foreign exchange earning, 2018, 1,90,000 crores. So you can see the figure from the year 2000 to 2018. In 2000, we did not even have 20,000 crores as earning. We had just 15,000 crores as earning, roughly 15,000. Now that has increased up to 1,90,000 crores. So tourism has grown so much in the last 18 years or so. Now coming to the eco and agro-tourism initiative, I would say it's an alternative to mass tourism. In tourism academics, we say proverb, tourism kills tourism. Thereby, we say that mass tourism leads to killing of a destination as a tourist destination. Because too many people will bring in lots of vices as well. So over-tourism brings its virtues, but it will bring more vices to the local destination than the virtues. So ecotourism or agro-tourism can be an alternative to the mass tourism over here. In mass tourism, you can see we have conventional, standard and large-scale tourism, but in alternative tourism, we have cultural, nature-based tourism or ecotourism. We can have educational tours, we can have scientific tours, we can have adventure tourism and agro-tourism. So the last two components, adventure and agri-tourism as part of ecotourism, are the ones on which Ladakh region has to focus. We cannot have all types of tourism. Please do not try to have all types of tourism in the region. Don't kill the region. Make it sustainable and try to market yourself as niche tourism product for two things. One is adventure tourism, one is ecotourism or agri-tourism. And you have plenty and plenty of opportunities, you have plenty of products, you have plenty of places, destinations. Every village in Ladakh I see or I have seen is a tourism product. Every village. There's not a single village I've seen wherein you cannot promote tourism, you cannot have homestays, you cannot have people coming in, you cannot have people coming in living the Ladakhi cultural way. Every village is a tourism product in Ladakh. So this is the agro and rural tourism development framework that we have in India. At country level, in 2018, we have had an ecotourism policy, which is declared by, of course, Joint Secretary Sir is sitting here, Ministry of Climate Change, Forest and Environment. So ecotourism policy is the first initiative to develop ecotourism all across the country. And I believe J&K must be having an ecotourism policy of its own as well. But now Ladakh needs to have its own. Then we have a guideline for safe and honorable tourism that is given by the Ministry of Tourism. So at central level, we have this. We have, of course, Wildlife Tourism Act and annual plans, which throw a lot of importance to agro and rural tourism. Then at the state levels, we have a farm tourism guidelines in 2 states of India. One is Punjab, one is Haryana. So वहाँ पे farm tourism एक अलग से policy है. Then we have agricultural policy of different state governments. Like in Maharashtra, we have Agri and Rural Tourism Cooperative Federation Limited. Now, I would suggest the policymakers to deeply study this initiative and try to extract maximum what can be applied to the state of Ladakh or the Union Territory of Ladakh. It's a very good example. I don't have much of time, otherwise I would have touched upon this as well. But I would still suggest you can go through this. It's all available on YouTube, it's available on the net, and the good things can be extracted. How cooperatives can be formed in our village, tourism cooperatives. Ladakh can have good tourism cooperatives, homestay cooperatives, and they can be managed by good websites. So entrepreneurs from this audience may come up, this becomes a big business for you to bring in the homestays on a platform, on an online platform, market it over there, sell it through the online platform itself. So the money which goes to Airbnb or Make My Trip comes to Ladakh itself. It doesn't go out of the state. Then we have the subsidies, the financial incentives, and so on. Every state, every government has lots and lots of incentives and subsidies to be given to promote tourism-related projects. At the national level, we have a Tourism Finance Corporation of India, which finances the various projects related to the tourism area. So anybody wanting to set up a good theme park or something like that, or maybe a rural tourism initiative in your village, you can prepare the project. The TFCI will be more than happy to finance you. Then the various rural tourism initiatives we take, it's a part of national tourism planning of the government. Promote village tourism as primary tourism product. Now gone are the days when we used to see rural tourism as a secondary tourism product, not the primary, but now we are focusing more on agro and rural tourism and making it the primary saleable tourism product of the country. You cannot have tourists coming in time and again to see Taj Mahal, but you can have tourists coming time and again to see an experience of, say, staying in a homestay in Ladakh, staying in a homestay in Kerala will give you a different experience. So you can come twice to India. But would you like to come twice to India to see Taj Mahal? Probably no. So rural tourism, ecotourism gives you an experiential tourism, which is the buzzword in today's industry. We call tourists to give them the experience, right? Not just to see or watch, but also to feel and do. Experience how things are taking place, experience how people live. Then financial assistance under this scheme is up to 50 lakh rupees. The permissible activities are improvement of village surroundings, signages, tourist accommodation, then improvement of roads, then elimination of village. This is part of Ministry of Tourism's Rural Tourism Development Initiative. So villages can get 50 lakh rupees to do all these things, right? Then elimination of the village, solid waste and sewerage management, construction of wayside amenities, procurement of equipments, eco-friendly modes of transportation, and of course, if the village rural side has a monument, then some refurbishing of the monument can also take place. Now, the 2 success stories, one is Kumarakom, a responsible tourism initiative, and the second one is ecotourism or agri-tourism in Govardhan village. And I'll show you a short 7 minutes video also on Govardhan village. Try to see it and try to see. It is related to religion, of course, because made by some ISKCON temple followers. But that can be a great learning for us. This is how India stands, and then we have the state of Kerala, the downmost part, the southernmost part of India, that is shown in green color. Now, the responsible tourism genesis is that it was started on a pilot basis in 2008, almost 10-11 years back. It was participatory and inclusive framework. The stakeholders, the people of the region had to be the participants, they had to be the stakeholders. It was not thrust upon them, but it was invited through them. They should also participate in this. It was implemented through a consultative process, Global Sustainable Tourism Council criteria and perspective. Triple bottom line was there, the responsibilities, the economic, the social and the environment, they were fixed, and the local population were the stakeholders in that. And of course, main focus was also to empower the women over there. The problem that Ladakh faces, like this sir said, कि Michael दारू पी के दंगा करता है. Similar situation was there in Kerala as well. So through this initiative, it was strived that women be more empowered, so that they are not too much dependent on men. The bottom line of this was that every stakeholder is benefited. Now, how it worked in Kerala? There was availability of plenty of natural resources, and I think there is availability of plenty of natural resources in Ladakh as well. So this is one thing in common. Skilled manpower, the literacy rate is highest in Kerala in the entire country. So it was a little easier for making people understand the concept and being part of it. Then it was supportive entrepreneurial community. The community could understand the entrepreneurial importance of responsible tourism project. They had a strong local self-government. Civil society organizations were there. Multitude of micro enterprises were there. Streams of professional and academicians pitched in to make it a success. And responsible media and responsible tourism industry. A lot of media was involved to create an awareness among the local masses. And media actually did a great job by promoting it, by sensitizing people through their write-ups, articles, and so on. And of course, the tourism industry in Kerala was also very responsive. They could see a future in it, that what happens once we become victims of over-tourism in Kerala. So they started thinking of sustainability and future prospects in 2008. And I think Kerala is the first state to actually implement a responsible tourism project, that too 11 years back, and it is still successfully going on. Then it was a process-based approach, mapping the daily requirements of the industry, mapping the resources available. How many tourists they are expecting to come to Kumarkom, what will be their requirements, number one, where are we going to fetch those requirements from, number two. So all these things were mapped out. Then sensitization program for the local community, the self-help groups, the elected leaders, the industry to accept and participate in RT, capacity building of the service providers. Like we have just seen that homestay, people are being trained how to run a homestay, how to be, the soft skills are given to them, cooking skills are given to them, right? Hygiene and cleanliness sessions are taken with them so that they maintain proper level of hygiene. Same thing were done over there. The capacity building was done for the various stakeholders. Various soft skill training programs were also done so that people learn the basic etiquettes and manners of dealing with the tourist. And of course, RT became a summer school for college university students. I think that was the best part of it. Kerala government initiated this thing in their schools and colleges. Students could become a volunteer under this initiative, and that they'll be certified as a participant in the summer school. Now, if I catch hold of a 15-year-old kid to be a part of it, that means the next generations are automatically taken care of. So involvement of youth of school and colleges was probably the best thing that this initiative did. And of course, the CSR charter was made. More than 6,000 people in 1,570 families were economically benefited by this Kumarkom project. Formation of production groups for powders, flour, meat, fish, candle, chapati, papad, because they had mapped the requirements for the tourists. Tourists की requirements पता चल गई तो self-help groups ने ये सारा production करना शुरू किया. Then there was a formation for a supply group. It was known as Samriddhi, the local procurement and supply unit. So buying from so many producers and supplying to the tourist homestays and all. Then institutional mechanism was developed, constitution of price and quality assurance committees. It's not that everybody can produce any damn thing and it is sold. No, quality assurance committee had made certain quality parameters so that they are followed well, and it does not create a bad impression in the tourist, because one dissatisfied tourist will create a scenario where 10 more tourists or potential tourists are adversely affected and they won't come. Then VLE packages were developed, village life experience. Local youth were trained to act as guides, take the tourists to the village, teach them about what village people are doing, and make them experience these things. Ethnic food restaurants came up. Environmental benefits arose because of tourism, like mangroves protection was there, use of fallow lands, waste management, and the best part is all things were done by the local people themselves. They were not with a begging bowl to some other people. They created the mechanism with the government help on their own for the survival of their own societies, and 1570 families benefited money-wise. This is how mangroves have grown over there. Second is Govardhan village, which is in Wardha area of Maharashtra. It is around 110 kilometers from Mumbai, and it has won the UNWTO Award for Excellence and Innovation in Tourism for the year 2016. And to talk it all, it was started by ISKCON followers as a religious thing, but later on it got converted somewhere as an ecotourism project, and it won UNWTO's prestigious award. Founded in 2003, the farm community spread over a scenic landscape of 65 acres at Galtare, which is around 110 kilometers north of Mumbai. Presently, it has 250 members. It illustrates simple living and high thinking, learning Vedic culture, yoga, and holistic healing, sustainability through eco-centric measures, and it promotes pure vegetarianism. That is the hallmark that ecotourism village says over there. It has natural buildings, that means 94 eco-stay villages are within that compound. Has yoga programs, women empowerment, organic farming, green buildings, water conservation, alternative energy, solar powers, biogas, soil biotechnology for sewage processing. Even they have got patent on the sewage processing. And I have met the sannyasis of this village, and to my surprise, 6 of them are an IIT graduate. And they have converted that entire knowledge over here. So they are getting patents of sewage treatment processing technology. Animal care and education for sustainable behavior. Then waste of one system becomes the feed for the other system. This is how symbiotic waste management they have done. So one process waste becomes a raw material for another process. So nothing goes to waste. The rural empowerment, it's holistic rural and tribal families. Almost 500 families are benefited because of this. Rural healthcare they take care of. Then concessional community health services are there. Biodiversity park is there. Cottage industries for soap powder, tooth powder, flour, incense sticks, cooking oil. These all they create for themselves. So whatever is the demand created by the visitors, they try to fulfill locally over there. They produce locally, and आजकल तो buzzword है organic. So the tourists probably pay thrice the market rates to get a local organic product. So there is no dearth of money by the tourists to pay. All we need is that we have to package the tourism product well and market it well. Even the stupidest most idea is saleable in tourism if we package it well, we market it well. The tourist should feel okay is getting some worth out of it. Then plant nursery, ornamental, fruit bearing, flower, forest, medicinal, etc. all in-house. These are some of the pictures. You can see the tourists are made to experience how village life is. So they are doing farming also. They are getting into farms with bullock carts. Over here you can see they are trying to sow paddy. They are picking up their own vegetables. I mean, just imagine a scenario where a tourist picks up the vegetables for himself or herself cooks it for himself, herself, eats it, and gives you the money. I mean, that is the power of tourism. No? सब कुछ टूरिस्ट खुद ही कर रहा है, फिर भी आपको पैसे दे के जा रहा है, because organic food. So they are experiencing how to pluck a bhindi, they are experiencing how to chop it off, they are experiencing how to cook it, eat it, and pay 500 or 1000 rupees to the farmer to have this experience. The classes on making some articles out of mud. Second picture shows a traditional village setting of modhas and the charpais, which are knitted, right? So it's all a traditional setting. They're having their lunch over there. You can see hay casting being done. Tourists happy to learn how to milk a cow, how to milk a cow. And this is a photograph of the local population, how they have all been benefited with this community initiative, all done by themselves. And now I will just show you the short video on Govardhan Eco Village. इसमें एक वीडियो पड़ा हुआ है इसी फोल्डर में. So my advice to Ladakh will be, don't rush into tourism, go slow. Create a niche brand for yourself, which you already have. So don't try to get all the tourism aspects at Ladakh, which is not possible. We should not strive for that, otherwise we'll kill the destination. Focus on agro, focus on farm, focus on adventure tourism. Create a niche for yourself, brand Ladakh as a big tourism product for rural settings, for agro-tourism, for adventure tourism. Sound कैसे आएगा?
Lapel mic, please.
Govardhan Eco Village is about 2.5 hours northeast of Mumbai in a very beautiful rural village area of Maharashtra. There's a very holy place in India which is considered most sacred to devotees of Krishna. It's called Vrindavan. And in that Vrindavan is a mountain named Govardhan, which represents environmental, ecological harmony with spiritual principles.
This place is very special. Certainly it's unique in India and perhaps unique in the whole world. It's like a retreat center. It's like a spa. It's like an ashram. It's a place that's designed as an experiment to merge environmentalism, animal rights, and bhakti, spirituality, together, and it's working.
Come dance with me.
The amenities here are of a whole nother caliber. People, when they think of the words India and ashram, they think of harsh and rough living. From the Ayurvedic clinic, which not only gives treatments but also has an Ayurvedic doctor who helps prescribe something that is specific for your dosha. The atmosphere that is created by the founder, Radhanath Swami Maharaj, and the atmosphere that is created by the devotees who work here is palpable. You can feel it in the air.
Originally, I was from Chicago. When I was 19 years old in 1970, I wanted to try to broaden my outlook of life. So I went on a journey. Ultimately, I hitchhiked from London to the Himalayas in India. And as I was traveling, I came to realize that the real social and environmental problems of the world are due to a spiritual crisis. A crisis in what we consider is actually meaningful and fulfilling in our life.
Radhanath Swami is a passionate person. The best passion is compassion, and he has an ample amount of that. And that type of passion is contagious.
be coming here and helping, doing the save of the service, helping with the cows, helping with to weed mats, helping with make pottery. It's actually fun. It's very simple lifestyle, and I think a lot of us crave that on different levels.
And it's sort of programmed into our culture that you look for recognition. You need it. For me, being here, I see it's far more powerful to be humble.
It was easy to complain about the tiny inconveniences that come with a New York City apartment. Oh, it's not big enough. Oh, the water pressure isn't great enough. When you live in a house that you see built from the ground up, every step along the way is very special.
When people come here, we're trying to inspire an educational, experiential alternative of a fulfilling, meaningful, sustainable, healthy life.
Apart from these jasmine flowers which you see, he grows a lot of his ladyfingers, okra. Yeah? So we network with all these farmers so that we purchase them in our kitchen and use them.
Can we get these to the kitchen? We can give them to the young.
And the inspiration of this project, Srila Prabhupada, he called this transformation simple living and high thinking.
We get 3,000 millimeters of rain annually. So the rainwater hits against those mountains, the Sahyadri mountain ranges, and flows down and collects here. And it is sufficient water for us to irrigate our fields for up to 6 to 7 months every year. The majority of India's population, which is 1.2 billion, lives in the villages. So one of the very important requirements to develop a village is how can water be conserved.
The process begins here. As you can see, the raw swage is falling and there are some screens. The first chamber is called screen chamber, where we are trying to separate floating solids. This is the raw water where we began, and this is the treated water. The uniqueness of this place comes from the fact that every waste is becoming a precious resource. That cow dung becomes a fertilizer for earth. He needs fire or energy for cooking his food, and therefore all of the cow dung we utilize for biogas plant. We need to make houses, so we use the same earth, and we have created 250,000 bricks. We call this a symbiotic recycling model. Flushing your toilet, you are contributing to the growth of a papaya. You are contributing to the growth of flowers.
One of the greatest management gurus. The greatest management challenge of the 21st century is managing oneself.
Many corporate heads are having seminars and retreats here, and they also see alternative ways by which they could focus their own corporations and feel a real sense of responsibility to humanity.
The thing I'm most compelled to do when I get home is really seva. It's service. It gets us out of being so self-absorbed.
I always had too much, and now I want to have a real simple life, like here. I love simple life, and my goal is to make a simple life in my home.
And if we just refocus our energies with these values, we could transform the world.
It's truly a miraculous, magical place on this planet.
To make people feel the importance of tourism and of course eco and agri-tourism, I would like to use this platform that for any sort of tourism related activity, I am offering my services for guide trainings. In fact, for the skill training part, I myself is a trained trainer of World Tourist Guide Federation Association of London and Vienna. In fact, I have 7 more colleagues in my institution who have undergone this train the trainers program. So anytime wildlife tourism training, the skill part, I offer my services or on behalf of my institution. We can come here and teach the skills related to the guiding profession, not the knowledge part. Ecotourism knowledge subject domain experts will take it, but we can take forward the skill part, how to handle a group, how to behave like a guide, how to think like a guide, and so on, right? So thank you so much. I wish all the very best for Ladakh. Thank you.
है हरियाली चारों तरफ, है खुशहाली चारों तरफ, मत काटो इन पेड़ों को, होगी बर्बादी चारों तरफ। मत करो बर्बाद समय, आओ पेड़ लगाते हैं, कल कभी नहीं आता है, समय यूं ही चला जाता है हरियाली चारों तरफ, है खुशहाली चारों तरफ। थैंक यू डॉक्टर पवन, आपने इतना एक इंफॉर्मेटिव प्रेजेंटेशन दी, 2 प्रोजेक्ट्स के बारे में बताया और लद्दाख में भी एक आइडिया दिया कि हम किस तरीके से इको टूरिज़्म कंसेप्ट को लेकर, इको टूरिज़्म होम स्टे, विलेजेस और भी बहुत सारे ऐसे हम प्रोजेक्ट शुरू कर सकते हैं। तो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया डॉक्टर पवन।